Hey guys, today is August 12th, 2023, and it just happens to be the 91st Mercury Anniversary after 9/11/2001. And if you see on the screen here, I have this drop of Mercury-looking sculpture. It's called Cloudgate, and it's located in Chicago, Illinois. And in this video, I'm going to connect the earthquake symbolism and some predictive programming that connects 9/11 to a possible future event in Chicago related to earthquakes. And we'll just take a quick look at the math here for our 91st Mercury anniversary for today. After 9/11, it's 8,005 days from 9/11/2001 to today. And we'll divide that by our Mercury year, which is 87.969 days. So there's our 91st Mercury anniversary today. And if you remember from my last video, I showed you that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they're born exactly 91 Mercury years apart as well. And they share a Mercury birthday coming up in October. But we're going to be talking mostly about Chicago today and the predictive programming pertaining to Chicago, or some of it. Back in 2017, this was my first inclination to start looking at Chicago as a possible location for a 9/11 type event or an earthquake event. And I did this Chicago and the Revelation earthquake back in 2017 on December 13th. And not necessarily a very sophisticated or very good video, but it's where I did get my start looking at McCormick Place in Chicago, especially as a highly predictive programming. It's connected to all these different events on the map and eclipses and monuments like Georgia Guidestones and the San Jacinto Monument. But we'll go through that in this video as well. We'll do a little review on what the monuments and the distances and the numbers that all pertain to that. So I've been working or looking at Chicago for about 6 years now, and I'm going to be doing more and more videos upcoming in the future regarding Chicago. So why is Mercury so important to 9/11/2001? So I have the date here, 9/11/2001 on Stellarium, 8:46 a.m., which is the beginning of the events of 9/11 when the first plane hit the World Trade Center. And you can see here, have the horizon. Took the horizon away, but we have the horizon line. And this is the location of the planet Mercury at 8:46 a.m. And just as the events of 9/11 started to unfold, we had Mercury breaking the horizon and then continue to rise through all the events of that day. And of course, we had the 1998 movie Mercury Rising starring Bruce Willis. And we're going to go through this in part 2, but there's specific date counts, very specific date counts that are no accident, that apply to Bruce Willis and this movie Mercury Rising. And Bruce Willis is also connected to JFK. Right, in JFK, he died on his Mercury birthday, and he died after his motorcade took a turn on the symbolic Mercury position on the Sephiroth. But we'll look at more of the specific counts in part 2. We're just going to go over some general symbolism for Chicago and its connection to Mercury, why Mercury is so important. And this also has to do with the founding of the United States of America. We'll be looking at some dates in the past and how the date of 4/19 connects to the founding of the United States of America and Chicago, predictive programming as well. So of course Chicago, located on the coast of Lake Michigan, but it's also known as the Windy City. And if we go back and look to a slide that I made for a video that I did quite a while ago, the name America or Amérique in the Mayan language means a country of perpetually strong wind or land of the wind. So there's our connection to Chicago and the Windy City, right? And on the Mayan calendar, if we start at the 0 point on the Mayan long count, that 0 point was August 11th, 3114 BC on our calendar. And 811 is, of course, the focus of my channel from Revelation 8:11, the wormwood event. But the origin or the beginning of the Mayan long count was 8:11, 3114 BC. And the name of America itself connects to the definition or the meaning, the Mayan meaning of strong wind. And Amaru, the prefix for America, Amaru is synonymous with Quetzalcoatl, the plume serpent. So America, the land of the plume serpent, the land of the perpetually strong wind. And we have Chicago, our windy city. And then we have our connection with 9/11 and Mercury rising. So that's why we're looking so heavily at the Mercury count. And Mercury is our messenger god. He's the god that transcends or bridges the upper and lower realms, the messenger. If we go back here and look at this sculpture in Chicago called the Cloud Gate, it's by an artist called Anish Kapoor, and the design was inspired by liquid mercury, and the sculpture's surface reflects and distorts the city's skyline. So if we take a look at this, right, when you walk around it, you can see that it distorts the skyline and the ground, the horizon of Chicago. So that's kind of like a symbolic earthquake, right, would distort the skyline and city of Chicago. And it's also kind of like a birth ritual monument. The underside is called the omphalos, which is Greek for navel, right? And it's the navel or belly button that connects a baby to the placenta, right, when you're born. So there's a birth connection here as well. And we have the earthquake connection with the distorted city view of Chicago. And the most interesting part here is that this Cloud Gate sculpture, this monument, was actually dedicated on 5/15, May 15th, a very special date to Mercury. It's called Mercurialia. The initial Mercurialia was 5/15, 495 BC. So we have our dedication of the Cloud Gate monument. Not only does it look like liquid mercury, it was founded on the date of the dedication of Mercurialia. And we have our America, kind of Mercury is kind of in that too. Mercury, America, Mercalia. So another connection here I want to show you that it kind of has predictive programming for like an impending disaster in Chicago is this folklore or mythology of the Mothman. Now, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area. The sighting of this creature preceded the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. And I'll just read this real quick. But the creature was introduced to a wider audience by Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there were paranormal events related to the sightings and the connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. And then this book was later adapted into a 2002 film starring Richard Gere. Now this Richard Gere character, or actor, there is a very specific reason they chose him to be in this movie, The Mothman Prophecy. Just like we'll get to in part 2. And my fellow decoder, he already did a video about this, but Bruce Willis was very specifically picked to be in this movie, Mercury Rising, due to his Mercury count. But we'll get to that later. But so just like Bruce Willis was chosen for his movie, we have Richard Gere was chosen for his role in the Mothman Prophecies because of his connection to Mercury. But we'll take a look here at the Chicago connection on this Wikipedia page. So down here, we have this little paragraph that connects it to Chicago. It says, according to University of Chicago psychologist David A. Gallo, 55 sightings of Mothman in Chicago during 2017, published on the website of self-described Fortean researcher Ron Strickler, are a selective sample. Gallo explains that he is not sampling random people and asking if they saw Mothman. He's just counting the number of people that voluntarily came forward to report a sighting. So we have these 55 sightings of the Mothman that people came forward and reported to this website. So we have this connection with the sighting, right? So we have the sighting of the Mothman in Chicago, and the folklore or mythology is that the sighting of the Mothman precedes a disaster. So there we have our Mothman connection to Chicago on the Mothman Wikipedia page and the Mothman folklore. And we'll get to this predictive programming, spellcasting symbolism with his this Richard Gere and his role in this as well. But it's interesting too that they kind of connect Batman to Mothman, because if we look at a picture of Mothman, he's kind of like, in a way he's kind of like Batman, but he's not. But there's a statue and a festival every year in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, dedicated to this Mothman prophecy. But we're going to take a look at Richard Gere here. He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right, which is a pretty interesting when you look at it in the context of the founding of the United States of America, right? Philadelphia, where they wrote the signed the Declaration of Independence. And he was born on August 31st, 1949. That just happens to be August 31st. On the tropical zodiac, he's a Virgo. And a Virgo was ruled by Mercury. And we go back to 2001. We had Mercury and Virgo, right? The sign ruler here. So we have all this connection here with Mercury. So there's a very specific reason they chose him as an actor for these two movies. I should say for this movie. I'll show you the second movie here. So Richard Gere, born in Philadelphia, connected to the foundation or the founding of the United States of America. He's a Virgo ruled by Mercury, and Mercury was in Virgo on 9/11. And he's connected to the Mothman prophecy. And his filmography, very interesting, in 2002. He did the Mothman prophecy, and then he did another movie called Chicago. So in 2002, they made sure to get the Mothman and Chicago done with Richard Gere as part of their spell casting ritual here for whatever event they have planned for Chicago in the future. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to take a look at some of the symbolism that these monuments and the distances between the monuments and Chicago here kind of represent. So I have a lot of I've showed you all of this before, but we'll just kind of do a quick recap. McCormick Place, very interesting. McCormick Place is the largest convention center in the world. It's adjacent to Ares Crown Theater, right? Ares is the god of war, like the theater of war. And we have Martin Luther King Drive runs adjacent on the other side here of McCormick Place. Martin Luther King, of course, was assassinated. McCormick Place, super connected symbolically to Trinity. We have this McCormick Place website. It shows the symbol has this star, and that star is connected to the San Jacinto Monument in Texas. San Jacinto Monument in Texas has the exact same star on its on the top of it here, and on this website here it says that the star weighs 220 tons, and I'll show you why that's so significant. But if we go back here and take a look at the map, we're going to look at McCormick Place, and we're going to zoom out here, and we're going to go all the way down to how McCormick Place, which has the star in its symbol. the San Jacinto Monument in Texas. If we follow this line and goes directly through the San Jacinto Monument, it points directly at McCormick Place. And then perpendicular, exactly 90 degrees to this line that points at McCormick Place, is if we draw another line through the reflecting pool, this line points directly to the Trinity test site. It's kind of interesting that they just released the movie Oppenheimer, all about the Trinity test. So here's our Trinity test site, which runs perfectly perpendicular to the line that points to McCormick Place, and this points directly to the San Jacinto Monument, directly through the reflecting pool. Let's see what else I have here. So if we go back, take a look here at this, talk about this 220, and this date of April 19th, we had the American Revolution. It started on April 19th, 1775 in Massachusetts. And if we go forward 220 years, that just happens to land on the date of the Oklahoma City bombing. So we had our 220-ton star on the top of the San Jacinto Monument, and 220 years after the American Revolution started, we have the Oklahoma City bombing. And what's interesting about this, it was the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, and Alfred P. Murrah was a judge that was appointed by FDR, and FDR is the president that brought the Trading with the Enemy Act inland to include the United States citizens in 1933. The 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act was originally enacted in 1917, and then in 1933 FDR amended it and brought it inland to include United States citizens as enemies of the state. And Alfred P. Murrah was a judge that was appointed by FDR, so there's our connection there. And of course, we're told that Timothy McVeigh, right, he was a right-wing terrorist, domestic terrorist, right, like a patriot, a right-wing patriot, just like the founding of the United States was founded by patriots that wanted to be free from the British rule. And unfortunately, back in 1933, that was we lost our last bit of freedom through this amendment of the Trading with the Enemy Act when they brought it inland to include the United States citizens. The president took over all publicly registered property. So anything that was publicly registered, like anyone on a birth certificate, that's when the president took over all publicly registered property. So there's our birth connection here again. We'll go over this in more detail later, but so there's kind of the symbolism behind Oklahoma City, right? This was 1995, and what's interesting about Oklahoma, I had talked about Maine as being the location. The 2024 Great American Eclipse is going to exit the United States in the state of Maine, which is the 23rd state. And remember, there's 23 pairs of chromosomes given by each parent for the embryo. And Oklahoma just happens to be the 46th state, right? So 46, like a complete embryo would be 46 pairs of chromosomes. And if you look at OK, like Oklahoma, the abbreviation for Oklahoma is OK. It's 1511, and 911 minutes into the day is the time of 1511 or 3:11 p.m. But we'll go more into the connection with Oklahoma City. There's some very interesting time connections and other things going on there. So we'll get to more of that later. But I just want to show you the connection there. 220-year anniversary of the American Revolution. We had the Oklahoma City bombing. The other 419 that I want to show you that connects to Chicago is find it here. The documentary The Last Dance that follows the Chicago Bulls. That was released on 4/19/2020. Right? And we have Michael Jordan. He wears the number 23. He was actually born 23 days into a rabbit year. We have Dennis Rodman, the Worm. Right? Here he wears number 91. Just like Kamala and Joe Biden are 91 Mercury years apart in the Wormwood connection because he's called the Worm. And he had the multicolored hair. And there's a multicolored connection here. I'll show you guys more of that later when we get to the specific Mercury counts. And then Scottie Pippen, his son died. The reporting of his son dying was on 4/19 as well. So all these 4/19 connections, but The Last Dance, Chicago Bulls. Okay, guys, just want to show you all the connections there. The Trinity connection, McCormick Place connection. I showed you all this before, but a good refresher. I'm going to continue to do more and more predictive programming for Chicago. But this Cloud Gate, definitely one of the most interesting sculptures, symbolic sculptures in this little puzzle they have put together here. So we'll take a look in part 2 at the Mercury counts with Bruce Willis and JFK a little bit more. And for now, I guess, thanks for watching.